Revealed during the Nintendo Direct presentation held on June 21st, 2023, Otogi Katsugeki Mameda no Bakeru, Ola Saitaro no Sainan, or Mameda no Bakeru for short, is a 3D action-adventure game for Nintendo Switch developed by GoodFeel, who worked on previous Switch titles Yoshi's Craft World and Monkey Barrels. This announcement excited myself and many others, due in part to the game's stylish and colorful visuals and the company's positive track record, but also because of its resemblance to Konami's legendary Ganbare Goemon. Resemblance, however, may be a bit of an understatement, since GoodFeel staff is made up of many of the talented individuals who worked on that series in its heyday, including company founder Etsunobu Ebisu, the face of Ebisumaru, which is why people immediately started referring to this game as a Goemon's spiritual successor. With that pedigree, it's obvious why Goemon fans around the world would be excited, but adding to the hype is the fact that there hasn't been a new entry in the series since the 2005 title Toukai Douchu Oedo Tenguri Kaishi no Maki on the Nintendo DS. Not the 3DS, the regular old DS. Hopefully there will be another Goemon game someday soon. However, until then, surely most fans of the Mystical Ninja view Mameda no Bakeru as the Ganbare Goemon game they've been waiting for all these years. So given that context, how does the game actually stack up? From here on, as a Goemon superfan who just completed GoodFeel's latest offering to 100%, I'll give my verdict with as little spoilers as possible, exploring the game's story, its gameplay and game progression, its visual and sound design, how Mameda no Bakeru performs as a Goemon's spiritual successor, and my final thoughts on what's good and bad and who the game is ultimately for. Also, before we begin, I'm sure a few of you are wondering about the languages available for the game. And unfortunately, there are no English options for this initial publication, so for those who can't understand Japanese at all, you'll have to wait for an international release or hope for a patch down the line if you decide to purchase the Japan version. Anyway, without further ado, let's jump in.
Of course.
Released on November 30th, 2023, both physically and digitally for the Nintendo Switch.
Otogi Katsugeki Mameda no Bakeru, Oracle祭太郎の祭難.
Or roughly, fantasy action tale, Little Tanuki Bakeru and the Calamity of Oracle Saitarou is a game that takes place in Japan, but as explained in the intro, it's a Japan that is quite a bit different from the one we know in the real world. In Bakeru's Japan, the stories from old Japanese legends and myths actually took place, and the heroes and creatures from these stories exist in the present day. From the start, we're introduced to the first of these fairy tale figures on a dark and stormy night, a tiny youth running for dear life from an imposing, unseen pursuer in the shadows. This unlikely hero is Sun from the classic Japanese children's tale Isun Boshi, commonly called the Inchai Samurai or Little One-Inch outside of Japan. In his panicked hurry, he trips and is knocked out cold, but thankfully a young boy patrolling the area rescues the little fellow before he is harmed. This boy is the main character Bakeru. However, with him, looks are deceiving, as he is not a human, and as the title of the game suggests, he is actually a tanuki, or raccoon dog, creatures who are known in Japanese folklore to be extremely clever tricksters and shapeshifters, as well as for having some impressive virility sacks too. When Sun awakes, he is greeted by the elder of the Tanuki clan and Bakeru, and tells them of a terrible man known as the Oracle Saitarou, who is spreading chaos across Japan in order to subjugate the entire nation to his rule. And how is he doing this? By leading his army of jubilant goons to turn Japan into one big matsuri, a Japanese-style festival. That doesn't sound that bad to me, but it can't be good for the economy. Anyway, Sun had set out to rally heroes to take on this threat. However, there are two big problems. One is that Japan's greatest hero, Momotaro the Peach Boy, has been brainwashed by the jolly madman Saitarou. And two, Sun is just too much of a runt to be seen or take up arms himself, and the reason he was in such a mad dash earlier was because a bug scared him silly. Yeah, I don't think he's cut out for this. The immature Bakeru mocks poor Sun, which lands him in trouble with the elder. To make up for his rudeness, the elder assigns Bakeru to accompany Sun all the way to Ashigarayama Mountain in Kanagawa to seek out Kintaro, another hero of legend whose superhuman strength should help greatly in the fight against Saitarou. Although Bakeru is still a pup, in his human form he is quite nimble and strong, so he should have no problem protecting young Sun from danger along the way. To further ensure the duo's safety, the elder bestows upon Bakeru the treasure of their clan, the Haradaiko, a traditional drum instrument that, while not a traditional weapon, has the ability to knock the wickedness out of any villain it strikes. With Taiko and a boost of confidence in hand, the reluctant Bakeru and the heroic son embark on a journey to save Japan. The journey starts in Tokushima, a prefecture in the southern island of Shikoku, and ends up spanning all of Japan and more. Mameda no Bakeru provides a total of 63 stages connected by an overworld map, with at least one taking place in each of the nation's 47 prefectures. You'll get to climb to the tops of misty mountains as well as the tops of skyscrapers in big cities, hop and skip across the roofs of giant castles above the clouds, run through forests and fields as the colors of the autumn leaves change, sweat bullets as you infiltrate magma-infested lairs, bundle up in the cold landscapes in the north, soak in the sun on the beaches down south, and so much more. Gameplay is presented in several styles and genres, but a large majority consists of classic 3D platforming action similar to Super Mario 64, or, I know we're a little early, Mystical Ninja starring Goemon. Controlling Bakeru feels great, the platforming basics consisting of a jump and the ability to shimmy across or climb up ledges, with movement handled by the left analog stick and camera controls handled by the right stick. Holding down Y boosts his speed, and jumping while turning around performs a cool backflip, also like 3D Mario titles. Bakeru wields a taiko drumstick in each hand, and rather than using one of the controller's face buttons to utilize them, pressing the right and left shoulder buttons will execute single swings and combos. Pressing both at the same time will attack using both sticks for a more powerful strike. Continuously holding down the attack buttons in any combination for a couple of seconds and releasing them executes a special attack using the drum that impacts the area immediately surrounding the hero. At first I was a little worried how using the left and right shoulder buttons to attack would fare in a platforming setting, but it's very intuitive and feels natural. The Oracle Saitarou's army is made up mostly of brainwashed people and creatures wearing traditional Japanese hyotoko masks, which are commonly seen at festivals. Very fitting. Other enemy types include Japanese ogres, octopus ninjas, and imposing mechanical Mikoshi shrines. Bakeru has a couple of other maneuvers to help him in combat, including pressing the right trigger button to block. Timing the block just right will repel enemy attacks, leaving them open for a whooping, or in the case of projectiles, returning them to sender. Tapping Y in any direction will perform a dodge roll, which can be paired with a counterattack with the correct timing. The Hara Daiko is primarily a tool for battle, but its use is not limited to combat scenarios, as it is necessary for drumming on gears to move heavy machinery and to pound the ground and dig up items. Defeated enemies will typically drop a few Japanese ryo, large gold coins that can be spent on power-ups and upgrades, more on that in a bit, but also small orbs of mystical energy called Bakeruji, which allow Bakeru to use his shape-shifting talents. Of course, the game starring a raccoon dog whose name also translates to change in English features a transformation mechanic. Earlier in the game, Sun grants Bakeru use of a license to shrink down to his miniature height. Being that small allows him to enter and explore tiny holes and crevices, and while he is unable to attack in this form, he is able to float for a short time during jumps. There are 3 other licenses Bakeru can receive, all acquired early in the journey and given by Japan's mythical heroes. The Kintaro form prioritizes raw attack power, slapping and smashing any foe in the way with ease. The Urashimataro form allows Bakeru to attack with a pair of fishing rods, which stylishly dispatches enemies from afar. And the Momotaro form turns the young tanuki into a roller-skating, gun-toting neon pink merchant of death. You can transform into any of these heroes' forms at any time using the left trigger button, as long as you have any amount of Bakeruji saved up. While transformed, the energy gauge is constantly depleting, but as long as you keep moving and defeating enemies, you can remain in that form for practically the whole stage since energy drops are quite generous. The only playable character in the game is Bakeru, so the ability to shapeshift gives some much needed variety, and adds to the fun factor. There are a few variations of the platforming levels, including a type of running game setup that's similar to a 3D Sonic, minus all the frustrating collisions since anything you run into is instantly turned to dust, as well as auto-scrolling stages at a 3/4 perspective where getting left behind by the game screen equals death, old school style. Since there are no player lives in豆狸のバケル, dying is never too frustrating, and just means returning to a checkpoint and losing a small amount of coins, maxed out at 100. And speaking of coins, a merchant tanuki named Uriko appears at different parts of a level, usually near the start and at checkpoints, who sells a variety of sweets and trinkets that make saving Japan a lot easier. Several of these are stock items that can be used by pressing one of the directions on the D-pad. There's a bomb that obliterates everything on screen, candies that provide protection or unlimited bakeruji for a set period of time, a scapegoat figure that restores all hearts when Bakeru's life bar reaches 0, and a golden lucky cat that will increase the amount of money received from baddies and boxes for a while. A total of 3 of these items can be held at a time. However, there are also power and speed up candies which are consumed immediately and whose effects last the entirety of the stage, even after recovering from death. And last, Uriko sells a tasty rice cracker that's expensive, but extends life by 1 heart permanently. At the end of each stage is a giant taiko drum tower sending out Saitarou's mind-controlling Dark Carnival energy waves, protected by a barrier. In order to dispel this barrier, you must find and destroy 3 festive lanterns that power it that are scattered throughout the stage, though there are a few instances where this rule doesn't apply. Also, some stages contain more than 3 lanterns, and destroying additional ones will reward the player with a nice fountain of coins. In cases where Bakeru cannot backtrack and search for missed lanterns, enemies will be waiting near the taiko tower, and beating them removes the barrier. You could just breeze through, smash lanterns, and rush to get to the end of an area, but then you'd miss out on the collectibles hidden throughout in the form of fun facts and souvenirs. The fun facts are given by a little guy named Unchiku, whose name is a play on the words for gaining knowledge and, well, look at him. Poop. In most stages he's waiting in 5 spots, often out of reach or sight, and the knowledge he provides is almost always directly associated with the prefecture the stage is based on. You'll learn cool cultural information, such as the reason sumo referees carry small swords with them, which is to theoretically kill themselves if they screw up, as well as more practical stuff, like eating too many persimmons can form obstructions in your small bowel. Wow. The souvenirs are also found in nearly every stage, with 3 hidden away per level, housed in giant capsule machine toy cases. Inside these are items heavily associated or connected to the area, or a pennant to commemorate the trip. A couple examples of these souvenirs include Mikan and cherry figures from Ehime and Yamagata, respectively, since they are known around the country for their production of those fruits. Souvenirs, of course, are meant to be displayed as a reminder of your travels, and thankfully there's a place to do just that. The giant teapot-shaped airship of the Tanuki clan, the Bunbuku, based on an old tale of a tanuki who helps people by transforming into a tea kettle. I swear that's not made up. The ship becomes the base of operations for Bakeru's adventure, with an initial crew of the Tanuki Elder, the mechanic Keita, and a merchant named Mentaro, who sells a variety of masks that become available to purchase as the game progresses. These masks alter Bakeru's appearance, and that's it. They're only for decoration.
It's just for decoration, that's it and that's all, man.
Once the Bunbuku is unlocked, you can recruit new crew members, 18 other little raccoon dogs that are sneakily hiding away in select stages. Which ones they can be found in are identified on the stage info window on the world map, and it will take a careful eye to find them out, as the cunning canids disguise themselves as ordinary elements that blend into the environment. It's a pretty fun hide-and-go-seek feature, really. Gathering enough of these guys and gals allows Keita to make upgrades to the Bunbuku, for a price. There are 4 upgrades for purchase, 3 of which improve combat capabilities. That's right, the Bunbuku is a war vessel, but it's not just your average giant flying tea kettle warship.
特撮モード天気。
Yep, much like the Goemon titles it calls back to, Mameda no Bakeru features giant robot battles. Rather than first-person brawls, however, the action plays out similarly to a 3D fighting game. Controls aren't much different from the platforming stages, as the R and L shoulder buttons still control attacks, short presses for jabs, and long presses to shoot out the robot's fists to strike from afar. The right trigger guards, and Y performs short dashes and sidesteps. When enough mayhem has taken place, the L trigger performs one of two special attacks, a flurry of punches when close to a foe, and a powerful energy blast when far away. Getting knocked over results in a countdown, and you must quickly press the shoulder buttons to recover. Toppled over enemies also get the countdown treatment, but the battle only ends when their HP meter is completely depleted. On a side note, the giant enemy designs in this game are awesome. Finally, there are a couple of other types of levels that involve riding a mechanical ally named Mayuge. Look at them thick eyebrows. Who is a Koma Inu, one of those Chinese lion dogs who guard shrines in Japan and are a part of dances at festivals. Well, a robot version anyway. Most levels involving this blocky buddy are racing stages, which take place on land, on sea, and even down mountain slopes. Other levels featuring Mayuge are shooting stages similar to something like Star Fox, but a lot simpler. These levels are short and fun, providing a nice and even thrilling break from the standard action platforming. He drifts, he does tricks, he shoots out super beams. He's a good boy. Graphically, Mameda no Bakeru isn't going to wow anyone with its technical achievements by today's high standards, but visually it is a good looking game with some great art direction that helps set itself apart from similar titles. The Japanese setting pops out with the use of bright and vibrant colors, and subtle touches like the use of traditional Japanese water patterns used in the oceans and streams really give the game's version of Japan a uniquely oriental feel. A lot of the environments are really quite beautiful, artistically and thematically. The character models have an almost cel-shaded look, which I like, but I can't say I feel the same way about the portrait art and story scenes, which at times seems off or a little amateurish, especially since there are no voiceover for these sections. It's not a big deal, but the story presentation could have benefited from a little more polish. Some objects and areas of the game, particularly in the robot battle sections, are mapped with low-res textures that look like they came straight from the PS2 era, but they're not too distracting. What unfortunately is more of a problem is a lot of the performance issues with the game. The frame rate overall is very inconsistent. At times it's quite smooth, though in large open areas, or when a lot of objects or enemies are on screen, things get choppy. Compared to its contemporary hardware rivals, the Switch is far from a powerhouse, but it's a capable enough system, and there are some really impressive large-scale titles that have run fine on it from its early days, so it's disappointing that these problems exist in Mameda no Bakeru. The game never chugs to the point where it's really frustrating or unplayable, however it is noticeable and does hinder the experience a bit. Playing in handheld mode, these problems still persist of course, but feel a little less jarring, perhaps due to the small screen size. As far as Mameda no Bakeru's soundtrack goes, well, you've been listening to it the entire time, so you be the judge, though I think most would agree it's pretty good. There are a lot of great songs that have that distinctly Japanese flavor, and a couple will surely get stuck in your head once you put the game away. Sound effects are great too, nothing seems cheap or off. In fact, the sound design is very similar to something you'd expect from a Ganbare Goemon title. So you know what, let's finally talk about how this game would fare if it was a part of that series. The short answer is that if this were a 3D Goemon title, it would be one of the better ones for sure, maybe even the best. Since the story and locales are based in Japan and Japanese mythology, legends, and monsters, Mameda no Bakeru is filled with so many visual and audio elements that bring back memories of Ganbare Goemon adventures. There's a lot of humor in the game showered in goofiness and puns, delivered by a likable cast of characters, though they aren't quite at the same level as the characters in Goemon, and honestly, how could they be, given Goemon's long and refined history? The title and story beats could easily fit right in as a new entry to the legendary series, what with traveling around Japan to thwart a weirdo antagonist hoping to take over the country. And without giving it away, there's a bit of a twist near the end as well, which is pretty much expected. Again, going back to the music, although the songs here aren't as catchy or memorable as the classics from the Goemon games, which honestly have some of the best Japanese-style tracks in gaming, the ones here would be at home in any of the later Goemon titles, in my opinion. With a few tweaks, this could have passed for a modern Goemon, and I think most fans like myself would be pretty satisfied. I mean, almost anything is better than nothing. Well, maybe except that. But豆狸のバケルhas a lot going for it. Let's get to that now.豆狸のバケルis a game made with passion and is very much a spiritual successor to the Ganbare Goemon series, though it establishes its own identity enough so that it doesn't feel derivative or like a straight ripoff. You can look at this game as a love letter to Goemon, but perhaps it's more fitting to look at it as a love letter to Japan, since anyone who plays this charming game is sure to learn a lot about Japanese culture. It's a finely designed adventure with excellent art direction and design, packed with a lot of content for the slightly lower than average asking price, taking me about 18 hours from beginning to end to find all collectibles and purchase all items and upgrades. Since it's on Switch, Bakeru's tale can be enjoyed at home or on the go, and it looks great in handheld mode. This Japanese version doesn't have English voice options at the moment, however for anyone with a little bit of Japanese ability, it's easy to navigate and enjoy the story since all kanji are accompanied by furigana. It is a game that seems tailor-made for fans of the Switch, but especially the younger ones with its simple yet fun story and colorful visuals and characters. But the good for kids bit is one of the game's flaws in my opinion, as Mameda no Bakeru is way too easy, and I guess it would be considering the target audience. The old Goemon games were also targeted to children, except in that era, games were just more difficult, and in modern times kids games aren't and arguably shouldn't be too challenging. Most deaths any experienced player will run into will probably be related to pitfalls. The races, shooting sections, bosses, robot battles, everything is very easy. And any semblance of challenge only shows up during the last handful of stages. To add to the lack of challenge, one of Bakeru's forms is so overpowered it almost feels like cheating when using it. And once the game is done, there's not much to do. Nothing special is unlocked for collecting all souvenirs, trivia, or masks, and discovering all the Tanuki helpers and purchasing the final ship upgrade is a massive letdown. The previously mentioned technical problems also mar the experience a bit, as do the oddly long load times when starting up stages, which take me back to the PS1 era. Other than that, while the stage designs are great for the most part, there are a lot of invisible walls. Not just on the outskirts of the stage, but in weird spots where you should be able to pass, such as between railing and lower areas, railing on ramps and stairs, stuff like that. Sometimes it's just baffling when you run into these oddly placed barriers. And that's my review of Otogi Katsugeki Mameda no Bakeru, Orakuru Saitarou no Sainan for the Nintendo Switch. Sure, it has its flaws, but what game doesn't, and the good far outweighs the bad. I highly recommend it to fans of the Ganbare Goemon series, 3D platforming, the Nintendo Switch, or games with a distinctly Japanese look and feel. Oh, and for kids. This is not some big budget AAA title, it's just a great effort from the small team at GoodFeel, a great gaming company who self-published this title, so a lot is riding on its success. It seems to be doing moderately well sales-wise, received favorable reviews in Weekly Famitsu, and even had a promotional manga included in an issue of Korokoro Comics, all good signs. It's a solidly designed platforming experience with extra frills that I hope gets the attention it deserves. Fingers crossed for more of this little raccoon dog's adventures down the line. Or Konami taking notice and employing GoodFeel to do a proper revival of Ganbare Goemon. Or even combining the two series for something really special. Okay, that last one's super wishful thinking, sci-fi territory. Anyway, this is Jimmy Hoppa from Import Gaming for the win. Thank you for watching, and let me know what you think about the game if you've played it, or if you're considering joining the Bakeru army. We're always recruiting. Whatever the case, take care.